It Together with Lynn Greene talk show is a positive way to start your day. Ready for some encouragement?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm pumped. Let's let the healing begin.
Come be inspired, hear moving stories, even laugh out loud.
Can't make heads or tail of what I'm saying.
It's just incomprehensible.
Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
You'll hear real people doing real things to make a real impact.
You are heroes every day.
Hear honest, compassionate, engaging issues you care about.
You see people come together to do good in our community, and the more we come together, the more good we can do.
Listen in and get started on redesigning your life and hear what's positive in Greater Manchester. Here's your happy host, Lynn Greene.
Good morning, friends in Greater Manchester. Welcome to In It Together. I am so glad that you've tuned in. If you'd like to find me on the web, you can go to inittogether.net, listen live, watch previous shows, even link to our Facebook, our Twitter, our LinkedIn, and YouTube. And if you like and follow us, you will see we are bringing out the best in people to influence positive change in this community and beyond. Today is The Good Life with yours truly. That would be me. And in this segment, we talk about how to overcome challenges that we face that keep us from moving forward. I am here to hopefully encourage, to inspire, motivate, and maybe even hold you accountable a little bit based on the topics that we bring up or that I bring every Monday. It's usually stuff that I've experienced, I've gone through, I've overcome, I've learned from. And I've even helped some of my clients do the same thing. And so it's really about perspective. So this morning, the question that I pose to you is, are you being mistreated? If you are, you might want to stay tuned. We'll be back right after this brief message.
Mark Major knows that great coaches need constant training to be effective. As a certified coach, teacher, and speaker with the John Maxwell team, Mark can help you identify and activate your personal and professional goals. If you seek to do more and be more, look up Mark on the web at johnmaxwellgroup.com/MARC Major or call 603-674-6818. Mark Major, growing leaders and adding value. CrossNet Inc. offers computer and IT services for commercial clients as well as local personal users. We create tailor-made plans for your business's unique needs, from computer repairs to managing networks, servers, and desktops. CrossNet Inc. offers managed services, data backups, virus protection, web filtering, and more. For more information, go to crossnetinc.com or call for your personalized IT services today at 603-589-2520. CrossNet Inc. IT services that keep your business running when you're on the run.
Hi, I'm Jen Lever, anchor of the Recovery Now segments. Join me Tuesdays at 9 a.m. where I offer support to families struggling with addiction. Hear personal stories, learn the signs of addiction, and get help for your loved ones. Only on In It Together with Lynn Greene.
Welcome back to In It Together, kicking off with The Good Life. A couple weeks back, I talked about how the good life is possible, and I'm living it, so it isn't something that's too far off. A lot of it has to do with perspective. Where are we living from? Where are we thinking from? And how do we live, move, and have our being? And so I want to welcome all of those who are listening to us via internet radio, and those of you who are on the live stream this morning. I posed the question to you this morning, have you been mistreated? Are you being mistreated? Then this is probably the show for you. Been there, done that, have a whole closet of T-shirts, and you probably do too. But one thing I've learned is that in every opposition, there's an opportunity for us to grow and us to learn. And we can either do that, or we can, what I like to say, keep retaking this test that is coming at us. Now, I don't believe these tests are tests that our maker, God, or our creator gives us. I think a lot of times the tests happen because we're still learning. Think about it as a kid going through school. They start off in kindergarten. They start off learning their letters, and once they understand the letters, what they sound like, now they can form a word. And once they understand what a word is, then they can begin to put them together to create sentences. And then when you know what sentences are, you can create a paragraph, and then you can create a chapter, and then you can create a book. But today the theme is going to be, yes, it's about, are you being mistreated? But it's about you getting to write your book the way that you want. Okay, so Dr. Phil, a guy that I admire and respect, of course, I haven't watched him in years, so I don't know if, like many people I used to admire and respect that have gone up the deep end, I have no idea where he is. So, but back when I used to watch him, he used to say, you teach people how to treat you. And I think it's true. It's an ongoing thing as we go through life. We teach people how to treat us, and we meet up with people of different personalities, different backgrounds, different egos. Maybe a lot of times it's really pride that causes us to have these kind of interactions where people think they can do something that they weren't given permission to do. So the question is we have this book. The question is what are people reading? We are a book. What are they reading? And can we change the story? I think the answer is yes. We can change our story. And so our life is like this story. If we don't like the results of something, something has to change. And it usually does. Well, they say insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. Well, I've had the opportunity to coach and also to have small groups that I lead. I've been doing this for many years. And one of the things that I tell people is to pay attention to patterns in your life that aren't working. So relating to today's topic of being mistreated, what are some things that typically the pattern is this happened with this person, and maybe we said, well, that guy was just a jerk, and we move on to somebody else. And then this happened with that person too. And then it keeps happening. It's happened several times. Well, the common denominator, I hate to say it, is YOU. Like I said at the beginning, we teach people how to treat us. Now, I'm not saying that it's always the case, but a lot of times there's something we can do about it. And so I'm saying that to empower you that you're not a victim of somebody else's behavior. Okay, so we've heard people talk about the law of attraction, and there's an element of truth to what we put out there, because it can cause things to come back on us. But when we repeatedly mistreated, is it always our fault? That's a good question to ask. Over the past couple of months, I've actually felt mistreated on a couple of occasions. But because of what I had learned in the past, I knew how to process it right. And so part of what we talk about here is about not just what's the problem, but how do we process it right so that now we can approach it in a different way where we are not a victim and where we are not placing blame, but we take responsibility. Okay, so if you've been repeatedly mistreated, and there are times maybe it wasn't your fault, but over the past couple months, like I said, I've been mistreated. My first response, and yours probably too, is one of disbelief. Like, you just crossed the line, and I can't believe you just crossed that line. So disbelief is a typical first thought when somebody says a remark to you that was totally off color or just was completely not what your intention was or who you are as a person. And so that disbelief often comes because it feels like an attack on your personal character. And so after that happens, we tend to go into the anger aspect. We tend to get angry of the injustice that just occurred. And so we can do one or two things at that time. We can get angry at the injustice and go inward to think about, is there a part of this that maybe I could have done different, or now I see in a better way that I can maybe come back and just say, hey, you know what, maybe what you're doing and what you're trying to do is right, but maybe the approach or the way you said it wasn't. So maybe you can go back and say, hey, look, I still think this is the way it should go, but maybe I shouldn't have said it this way, and then own up to it. Apologize for your part. That's one thing that can happen when you're angry. And the other thing that can happen that probably isn't good, which I have done in the past as well, is retaliation. It's like, what did you say to me? What are you talking to me about? And then you can kind of go, and of course, some of us, if you have a good mind, you can immediately see, or a prophetic insight into something, you can immediately see someone's weak spot and you go for it. And that's probably not the best way to handle it, because how we handle something tells more about who we are than it does about who they are. After all, I was just defending myself, or so I thought. Okay, so there was a situation, and I kind of go into it, and I'm not, not going to point out the person. I still, no matter what, even if somebody has wronged me or if somebody has mistreated me, I definitely am not someone who will talk about someone, gossip about them, or anything like that, because everybody's growing where they are. So in this situation, I was hoping to partner with somebody to give them maybe an opportunity. Maybe they could get some more business in exchange for maybe some services they had to offer. And I didn't know them very well. I knew them through someone else that had used them, but they probably didn't know them that well either. But they did some work for them. They did good work. And I think the person was very talented. They were good at what they did. They were good at talking up their abilities. And I thought it was worth a shot to see if maybe we could make a plan that both of us could win, maybe a win-win situation where we could work together. Now, upon communicating with this person, even from the start, there seemed to be kind of like a misunderstanding about something that was said or how it was said. And I just kind of brush it off and say, oh, no, that wasn't what I meant, and just explain it. But I found that almost every conversation and encounter there was another misunderstanding. And it just seems like we had this communication gap. And so I would, he would sometimes oversell what he thought that he had, what he could do and everything. And they were great ideas. They just weren't where I was. They weren't my vision. And so he would oversell some things and then underdeliver. And so we had this time limit. I figured we had a couple months to get to a certain place. I made that very clear at the beginning. And, they assured me, yeah, we can do it. And what ended up happening is things ended up breaking. It ended up costing me about $1,000. And they weren't able to really deliver what I needed, even though they had some great ideas and they could have delivered something really fabulous, but it would have cost so much money. It was just not in the place that I was. So it wasn't my vision, okay? So the communication continued to be difficult. And I realized, it started with this argumentative thing, and I'm like, what? That's not a dynamic that I do in professional relationships, or any relationships for that matter. I just like to have a conversation and talk and work through things. So what I found was that they were not really developed in the area of communication very well. And I kind of knew it at the beginning, but I had worked with a lot of people who were immature. As a matter of fact, I've mentored, raised up a whole generation of people that way. And so I tried to extend grace after grace, be kind, be patient, restating what it was that I wanted in several different ways to see if something would stick. Trying to discover maybe how they worked, how they communicated, how things were. And I actually did go over and above what most people would do. They just, because I said so. That most people would just say, "Look, I said so. Deal with it." So it seemed like the only language they understood was kind of that form of direct, bordering on, "I'm your parent. Listen. Can we talk here?" No, stop. I said this. Just stop. And that's kind of what I found happening. I'm like, you know what? I raised my kids. I've already had 4 kids over 31 years, and I've raised them. And you know what? The parenting thing, I'm just not doing it. I'm not interested in doing it. I won't do it. I refuse. And so, again, that brought up that anger again. But when that happens, it's really a good time to reflect on yourself, okay? I prayed about these things a lot, because when you're dealing with somebody's life, when you're giving them an opportunity, you don't want to just cut them off at the knees. You don't want to ruin ruin someone's ability to, move forward, although it's not my responsibility how they respond. But I wanted things to work out. I thought maybe we just need to learn how to work together, because I'm very optimistic. And I took a step back for a couple weeks. We didn't engage. And then I attempted to communicate again. Things were okay for a short time, but then I noticed when I tried to communicate with them about things that I felt were not what I wanted and I didn't want to go in that direction, they would get upset and they would say, oh, you don't know what you don't think I know my job. And it's like, actually, it's nothing to do with you personally. It has everything to do with the vision that I have, that I believe God gave me to steward well and to do, and that I have a budget for. I don't go into debt. I mean, everything I have up to this point in my business is debt free, and I'm very, very proud of that. Not in an arrogant way, but in a humble way. That God provided for everything that I'm doing, and I don't want to go ahead of Him and get myself into a situation that I can't handle or afford. And so, usually, that's the case when you get in certain situations where somebody has crossed a boundary with you. It's a boundary that can affect your emotional, your physical, even your financial status. Then of course you have a right to say something, and you can expect that they either meet you there or maybe it's not going to work out. So I posed that question to you this morning. I mean, if there's anything I'm saying this morning that's connecting with you, what did you do? What have you done when somebody has mistreated you, crossed a boundary or a line, or you've had a problem communicating with somebody that tends to lash out at you or come up, with something, and they tend to not look at themselves, but place blame on you. It's usually the person that's blaming or that tries to check out of the conversation, decides when the conversation starts and ends, is the one that's probably the one mistreating someone. So that's something to look for as well. The pattern that we were developing was not a healthy pattern. It was one of letting them have their way to avoid conflict, and it started to happen kind of subtly. It was a very like an underlying, maybe unspoken, like I can feel like I'm being manipulated here into somebody else's vision that isn't mine. And so that's another part of being mistreated. It isn't always allowed being yelled at or somebody saying something, but it can be an underlying, attitude of, well, it's my way or the highway, or I'm just leaving, or whatever the case may be. And so I would back down to keep the peace because, in my heart, I know that I want to keep peace with all people. But then it was also an enablement on my part. And so these are things, when you go through something hard, most people will be like, I just kicked him out on the road. And I'm thinking, well, what did you learn? And it's probably going to happen again if you don't learn what happened. Okay? So in that story, finally, I realized there was something that I needed to learn. And I realized when I was young, if somebody got angry in my life, I saw other people drop everything they were doing to cater to whoever was upset, kind of like oiling the squeaky wheel. We know what happens when that happens. That's never good. When, we see this in politics and stuff where you oil the squeaky wheel. This is people who are, they may be, the one who's always complaining. You have the quiet person who's willing to learn, who's willing to do the work, and then you have the person who comes in as if they own the place and they got a charisma and everything, and they're very demanding and can be very difficult to work with. I'd rather take the person who is willing to learn. And so I was learning some things about myself through this. And every time you're being mistreated or going through an adversity like this or having trouble communicating, there's always a lesson in it for you. And until you realize that and you will own it, you will continue to face the same problem over and over again, whether it's in the situation you're in or the next one. Okay? So basically, I was doing what Dr. Phil says. I was teaching this person how to treat me. And believe it or not, I admitted to myself, and maybe you need to admit this to yourself, it was with my permission. And it's with yours too. So I'm going to take a short break, and we're going to come back, and I'm going to tell you all the points that I learned that can hopefully help you have a different perspective, a different way of approaching when you're being mistreated, how to change things up and make them better. All right, so I'll be back right after this brief message. Stay tuned and support those that support us so we can stay on air and continue to bring positive programming.
Little Leapers and Knowledge Keepers Childcare and Preschool offers learning experiences that give kids a healthy sense of self and meaningful connections to the world around them. We teach children from a positive perspective so they learn healthy conflict resolution and develop character. Owner Jennifer Lever has over 28 years' experience in child development. She's helped children learn to read as young as 18 months. Join our happy place where we make happy happen, located in Pinardville, bordering Bedford and Manchester. Call today at 603-491-1780.
Hi, I'm Lynn Greene, Advancement Strategist and owner of AlphaAdvancementStrategies.com. I've been very successful at helping people overcome stressful situations to get immediate results in their personal and professional lives. At Alpha Advancement Strategies, we provide a non-judgmental and supportive environment, empowering clients to focus more on reaching their goals. You can find us on the web at alphaadvancementstrategies.com or call us at 603-860-9260. Alpha Advancement Strategies is where you invest in yourself.
Hi, I'm Mark Major, certified coach and speaker. Join me Wednesdays at 9 a.m. for It's a Wonderful Life, all about leadership development and living a positive lifestyle. Only on In It Together with Lynn Greene.
Welcome back to In It Together in the midst of the good life this morning with yours truly. And this is all about, it's kind of like straight talk, I guess you could say, but it's supposed to be helpful, and it's meant to be an encouragement and inspiration and even a motivation to help you to begin to define what do I want, what I don't want, and what am I going to continue to allow in my life, what I'm not going to allow in my life, so that I can walk through it better, more fulfilling, enjoy my journey, because that's what we're meant to do. We're meant to enjoy it. And so my encouragement to you this morning is don't take anything less. You get one life, you get one shot, and I wouldn't take anything less. So I did have one comment. Somebody said, as we're talking about teaching people how to treat us, and somebody said that they'd pray for them, pray for wisdom on how to deal with it and in the right way. Absolutely. That's exactly what I did. But in order to do that, you have to reflect on not just what's wrong with them, but your part. And so when I pray, it's always about what's my part first, and then for understanding of where they're coming from and how to, if there's a way I can help them, or if it's nothing that I can do, or maybe pray for them that God can do something with them. And then another comment was to let them know in a non-confrontational way how you're feeling, and that it's not acceptable to set perimeters that you want to get along with them, but there are lines you will not let them cross about mutual respect. Absolutely. Very good comments. I want to say, hey, good morning. We see people from New Hampshire, from Enfield, Connecticut. A lot of people on this morning. Really appreciate you. Someone from Texas. See a lot of people from all over. We're really blessed to have you here this morning. And again, I don't feel like I'm an authority on everything. I'm coming from a place of walking through it, learning from it, and then just kind of sharing the nuggets that I've learned from it. So if you've just tuned in, today's topic is, are you being mistreated? And the question becomes, if your response to that is if it's angry and yes, then you really need to go back and listen to the beginning of this and how to process this. If it's, yeah, I have been, but, your attitude is good and it's not affecting you inside, then you're in a good place to learn and grow from it. And that's how we can tell. If something happens in our life, something happens around us, or something happens between us or in a place that we frequent or whatever, we don't have to let that in us. But what's important is to develop a strong inner person, inner being, to a spiritual level, so that those things, we can see them and we can address them, but they don't affect us negatively. And that's what we want to get. And that's called maturity. And the way that happens is, I believe for me, on the spiritual end, is to invite God into every aspect of my life and allow him to correct me, or allow him, when in his correction is never harsh. It's always an encouragement to be better because he has a better way. So we left off the last segment talking about how I realized that the person that I was dealing with that had crossed some boundaries and was kind of manipulating, and maybe they didn't know they were being manipulative. Maybe that was a normal dynamic they understood. But it wasn't one that I wanted or that I would allow. And so after all the chances of trying to communicate and them not communicating back or responding well, or sometimes not responding at all, I decided that it wasn't going to work out. So I had allowed this to happen, and it wasn't getting better. It was starting to get worse, to the point that I was losing my vision for what I wanted to do theirs. And this again made me angry. But it wasn't for long, because I recognized, how long you stay angry really tells a lot more about you. I got angry because it was like an injustice of, I've tried to help you. I've given you every opportunity, and you've taken advantage of it. You've crossed the line. You've disrespected what I was trying to do, that kind of things. And so I assessed it, but not to get mad at them personally. I assessed it to realize what wasn't working, so that I can make a decision of whether I was going to continue with them or not. There was a moment that I felt manipulated, taken for granted, and a whole lot of other feelings. And you've had those feelings too. Somebody said something, crossed the line. You felt maybe used, for a moment. But really, to be in a mature place, you have to really look inward first. All right, I'm just kind of looking to see if anybody's making comments so that I can share them. I don't really see any here right now. Okay, here we go. Somebody was saying there's different cultures. Yes. Somebody's listening or watching from Vietnam. Well, welcome to our show. I love that people from all over the place. This is awesome. If you've ever felt those things, really, to me, our emotions are not who we are. To me, they're kind of like a compass to tell us where we're putting our attention or what's happening, so that we can address them in a mature, responsible way, and not so that we can lash out and give them what they gave us. That's not going to work. We don't respond to evil with evil. We don't respond to, somebody's bad behavior with more bad behavior. We overcome it by good. And so I did that the best possible way. I thought about how, when you get into a place where you can't talk to somebody anymore without them lashing out with you, I actually had to remove myself from a situation and get a third party to come in so that I could relay messages without allowing myself to get into a situation that was unhealthy or to perpetuate the problem. And sometimes that's the way it is. The Word of God tells us this, and I think it's Matthew 17, Matthew 18, about, if you have aught with somebody, you go to them and you talk to them, and if they don't listen, then you bring in somebody else. Usually it's the elders, somebody who's mature, to be able to mediate that with you. And when that's no longer possible, then there's not much you can do. And so I went through everything. So there's no regrets for me in this situation. How many times have you walked and had a situation with someone and you did have regrets? You didn't handle it well. You didn't do it the way that you could have done it, and it wasn't until later you realized it. I'm hoping to encourage you to maybe not do that, okay? We don't live from our feelings, and I don't. It served me well, and because of this, the situation caused me to get in touch more with what wasn't working, and I didn't allow myself to wallow in self-pity, which is another thing. That person hurt me. Don't allow offense to come into your heart. Instead, I took responsibility for allowing it to go as far as it did. I decided to talk with someone I respect, who's a mentor of mine, spiritually and otherwise, about the situation. I wanted them to actually hold me accountable for my part, if any, and also prevent it from happening again. And what was great about it is they told me, sometimes things can happen, but it's not always your fault that it happens. People can say things to you, and it may not always be something you invited. I asked them to share their perspective with me, and they confirmed that I didn't really do anything wrong, that it was more that I was being generous and passive to a fault, and we can do that. You can have a good quality, and you use your good quality too much, and it can be a fault. A strength can become a weakness overdone. And so I let this person take advantage of the situation, and they crossed the line by forcing their vision instead of respecting mine. And what I learned from this was that I can be too obliging because, I don't like conflict, but I'm not avoiding it. But I can be too obliging because I hope the best about people. I think the best about them. And I think the Word of God tells us to do that. But I also want to be wise. Okay, we want to learn. Sometimes that conflict finds us when we're not looking for it. And when we don't have healthy boundaries, some people won't ever be reasonable. Either way, it's kind of like you're darned if you do, you're darned if you don't. Sometimes it's not really about you, it's about them. And so I learned that more than one vision almost always causes division. Actually, more than one vision is division. So we just can't expect to work well with someone who doesn't know how to communicate or collaborate respectfully. If they acted it was their way or the highway, and finally I just sent them on the highway, and I did it without having to be there. I sent them a message, an email after many emails of trying to communicate, and it didn't work. I just said, okay, well, after trying to communicate with you and you're intentionally not responding, I regretfully have to ask you to go. This is not going to work out for me, and I'm sad about it. I feel like that you had some great gifts that we could have worked together, but I just feel like this is a deal breaker if we can't communicate. And so that's what I had to do. And sometimes we have to realize when someone says, what someone says and what someone does can be two different things too. We can't just blindly trust them, but we don't want to overly distrust them either. But there's a balance that we can find, and we have a Holy Spirit in us that guides us into truth and to have discernment about what someone's intentions might be. Even though you're looking for the best of them, someone said to me once, you don't just trust people, trust is earned. And I'm thinking, yeah, I guess it is to a certain extent. So the fact is I invited this person into my world, and I was going to have to be the one that disinvited them. Not because I didn't like them or that they weren't talented. I just couldn't get on the same page with them. And guess what? It was my book and my story, and I get to write it. And I get to do it. And so do you. So here we go. We got a couple more minutes here. So just wanted to kind of share something. I was reading an article, a blog called 5 Steps to Help You Get It Right. It was talking about somebody mistreating you. And this is Sophia Nelson. She's an award-winning journalist and author. She quotes Maya Angelo, and she says, believe people first, that they believe people the first time that they show you who they are. And I wished I'd read that before, because it would have saved me 2 months, $1,000, a lot of mistakes, and a little bit of sanity. So more importantly, she asks, what are we showing people ourselves? Okay, we communicate with our energy, our attitude, our life. And what about me made this person think they could treat me this way? Take advantage of me, use me. Okay, so this is something I've been learning this past year, that people will use your kindness against you. If you watch our personal safety show on Thursdays a couple weeks ago, we talked about how people use your kindness against you. And it's people who don't have a heart after God, people who don't consider or feel accountable to God. I feel accountable to God, so my response, even to someone who isn't being nice, I'm still accountable to God. I have to do it the right way. We can learn from times like this, so we don't open the door and be mistreated like that in the future. The key to preventing being mistreated is self-awareness, setting boundaries, knowing what your values are, and sometimes making the tough decisions to let somebody go who crosses the line. We have to be willing to accept that sometimes we open the door. And the first time, that's fine, but when you keep opening it, that's on you. That's on me if we keep opening it, okay? So this is a huge lesson. I'm still processing some of this, and I do know that I'll be quicker to respond next time. And not everyone is going to have this same level of character or integrity as us. And they won't always have the same attitude or respect or even grace towards us. And this creates conflict if we join their pity party instead of raising them up to a higher level of the values that we have. And our values matter. Mixing the good with the bad always ends bad. So it says, how can righteousness and unrighteousness work together? It really doesn't. It's like trying to mix oil and water. And so we don't want to give up on our values for our values for anyone who hasn't really paid the price to have their own, or hasn't paid the price to keep the values that you have. So don't lower your level of expectation, and especially when you're communicating. You refuse yourself to become the very thing that you're trying to fight against, especially in your own space. Keep the faith, forgive yourself when you make mistakes, and realize that it doesn't define you, so you can move on better. And never be the person who mistreats others, especially if you don't want to be mistreated. Own your life mistakes, and you'll build resilience. You'll build character. Every like we said at the beginning, every opposition can be an opportunity. So if this has been helpful for you, leave a comment today. I'm going to go through them, and I'll respond to the ones that I can. And if you'd like to learn more about how to stop being mistreated, you need some help with something like that, you can go to alphaadvancementstrategies.com, and we can set up a brief phone consult, and I would love to talk to you about it, and then we could see if maybe we could move forward on anything beyond that. All right, well, that concludes today's program, and so tomorrow is Recovery Now with Jen Lever. You want to come, because this is where we talk about how to help your loved ones dealing with addiction. If you know anyone that has someone dealing or struggling with this, you want to have them tune in. All right, so have a blessed day, and remember, we are in it together. Signing out.